Have you ever wondered what truly energizes your behavior and gives it direction? From the simplest hunger pang to the most complex social aspiration. Welcome to CSS Breakdown, book by book, Seasonal 7, Episode 10, as we delve into Chapter 10, Motivation, from Atkinson and Hilgard's Introduction to Psychology 15th edition.
It's a fantastic topic. And, we all feel like we get motivation. We want something, we go for it. But digging deeper, a motivation is really this specific condition. It energizes your behavior, gives it that direction.
Right, and you feel it subjectively, don't you? Like a conscious desire for food, a drink, whatever it might be.
Exactly. But here's the really fascinating part that the chapter highlights.
Yeah.
Well, we can definitely choose whether to act on a desire, resist the cake, force yourself to study. It's much, much harder, maybe impossible, to directly control the motivation itself.
Okay, I see what you mean. Like when you're genuinely starving, you can't just decide not to feel hungry. The feeling is just there.
Precisely. So conscious choice often seems to be more of a consequence of that motivational state rather than the thing that kicks it off.
So if it's not just our willpower starting everything, what is it? What actually sparks that desire in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Yeah. And the answers range all the way from physiological events deep inside our brain and body.
Like hormones or blood sugar.
Right. All the way up to our culture, our social interactions, the environment around us. It's a huge spectrum.
So that's our mission for this deep dive then, to really explore these underlying principles. We'll look at basic biological drives,
Hunger, thirst.
And then move up to more complex social things, like achievement, belonging, and see how both internal factors and external ones shape what we do.
Okay, let's start with those internal factors. Psychology often talks about drive theories, right?
Yes, exactly. Drive theories really put the emphasis on internal states, often stemming from, basic physiological needs, like you said, hunger, thirst, that internal push. But it's not just about keeping us alive, is it? The book mentions things like sex or aggression having drive aspects too.
Absolutely. While they might not be tied to, say, an immediate survival need like water, they still have drive components. Think internal factors like hormones or maybe even needs passed down evolutionarily, that feeling of internal pressure.
And underpinning a lot of this, especially the physiological drives, is the concept of homeostasis.
Ah, yes, homeostasis. It's basically the body's amazing ability to maintain a constant internal state, like an internal thermostat, keeping things steady.
Which is incredibly important for survival.
Right.
Your brain temperature can't fluctuate wildly. Your water balance needs to be right.
Exactly. Our cells, our organs, they need that stability to function. Homeostasis is constantly working behind the scenes to keep us in that optimal zone.
So how does it actually work? What are the pieces involved? The book breaks it down into 4 parts.
Yeah, it's quite elegant, really. First, you have a set point. That's the ideal state, the goal.
Like 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit for body temperature, roughly.
Right. Then there's a sensory signal that measures the actual current state.
Okay, so what the temperature is right now.
Exactly. Third, there's a comparison. The system checks if the actual state matches the set point. Is there a difference?
And if there is a difference.
And comes the fourth part. A response is triggered to bring the actual state back towards that set point.
Let's use body temperature as an example. How does that play out?
Well, you have neurons, specifically in the hypothalamus in your brain, acting like supersensitive neural thermostats. They actually detect tiny changes in their own temperature.
Wow, not just skin temperature.
Right, the temperature of the brain tissue itself. If it deviates from the set point, their metabolism changes, their firing pattern changes, and that triggers responses.
Like shivering if you're cold or sweating if you're hot, those automatic things.
Yes, those physiological responses. But also, importantly, the psychological desire. The motivation to act, to seek shade, put on a sweater, find a cool drink.
It's amazing that you can apparently fool the system, right? Like cooling just those specific neurons makes a rat act cold even if it isn't overall.
Precisely. It shows how central that hypothalamic detection is. It really drives both the body's reaction and our conscious feeling of wanting to change the situation.
Okay, what about thirst? Another homeostatic process.
Yes, though it's a little more complex because we have 2 main places water is stored. There's the water inside our cells, intracellular, and the water outside our cells, like in our blood, extracellular. Depleting either one makes us thirsty.
Let's take extracellular first. Losing blood volume, maybe?
Exactly. Intense exercise, injury, not drinking enough. It lowers blood pressure. Receptors in your kidneys, heart, blood vessels detect this drop.
And then what happens?
Signals go to the brain. The pituitary gland releases ADH antidiuretic hormone, which tells the kidneys, hold on to water.
Okay, stop peeing so much.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, the brain signals the kidneys to release renin, which leads to angiotensin production. Angiotensin then activates specific brain neurons.
And that's what makes you feel thirsty.
That creates the strong desire to drink, yeah. It's why, for example, wounded soldiers often report overwhelming thirst. It's that system kicking in due to blood loss.
And the other type, intracellular thirst.
That's driven by osmosis. If your blood gets too salty, maybe you ate a lot of salty snacks.
Ah, the popcorn effect.
Exactly. The high concentration of salt ions pulls water out of your cells, including those hypothalamic neurons we talked about. They literally dehydrate slightly.
And that dehydration triggers thirst too. Makes perfect sense.
So those drives the internal pushes. But what about the things that pull us from the outside?
Right, the smell of baking bread, seeing an ad for a cold drink on a hot day. That's different, isn't it?
Totally different. That's where incentive theories come in. They focus on external events or objects, incentives that act as motivational forces. They pull us.
And they often act as rewards, right? They give us pleasure or make us want to repeat the behavior that got us the reward.
Precisely. And we can distinguish between primary and secondary reinforcers here.
Okay, what's the difference?
Primary reinforcers are just inherently pleasant. Sweet tastes, sexual sensations, warmth, no learning needed.
Got it. And secondary?
Those gain their power through learning. Money is the classic example. Good grades, praise, even brand logos. We learn to associate them with good outcomes.
So it's not drives or incentives, is it? It sounds like they work together.
Absolutely. They're not conflicting theories. They're different sides of the same coin. They interact constantly. Think about that example you gave, hunger, the drive.
Makes the food advertisement, the incentive, much more powerful.
Exactly. And the reverse is true too. The smell from a bakery, a strong incentive, can suddenly make you feel hungry, awaken the drive.
Yeah, food definitely tastes better when you're actually hungry.
Which leads us to some really fascinating new research.
Yeah.
The difference between wanting and liking.
Wanting versus liking, aren't they kind of the same thing when it comes to rewards?
That's what people used to think. For ages, reward was seen as one thing. But neuroscience now shows they're distinct brain processes. Wanting is the anticipation, the craving, the seeking.
Okay, the drive to get something.
Right. And liking is the actual pleasure you feel when you get it during consumption.
How did they figure that out?
Well, early studies found animals would work like crazy for electrical stimulation in certain brain areas, the so-called pleasure centers. Dopamine neurons seemed key. So the assumption was dopamine equals pleasure.
But that's not the whole story.
No. Newer methods measure seeking behavior, how hard you'll work for wanting. And for liking, they look at involuntary facial expressions. Even rats make distinct faces for sweet tastes versus bitter tastes.
Like a little rat yum face versus a yuck face.
Pretty much. And when they use these separate measures, the results are striking.
Such
Animals getting that brain stimulation will seek it relentlessly, huge wanting. But if they're already full and you offer them the actual food reward, they might show facial expressions of disgust while still pressing the lever for the stimulation.
Wow. So they want it, but they don't actually like it at that moment.
Exactly. Wanting without liking. Then you have mutant mice with extra dopamine. They show more wanting, eat more, learn faster for rewards, but their liking faces are totally normal.
Okay.
And maybe the most compelling. Rats, with their dopamine neurons destroyed, show no wanting. They won't seed food, they'll starve unless you feed them directly.
But if you put sugar water in their mouth...
Their liking facial expressions are completely normal. They still enjoy the taste.
So the big takeaway is dopamine is mostly for the wanting, the motivation, the seeking.
Primarily, yes. It's the engine of desire, the incentive motivation system. While liking, the actual pleasure, seems to rely more on other systems, like the brain's opiate system.
That difference is huge for understanding things like addiction, isn't it?
Absolutely critical. Addiction isn't just liking drugs a lot. It's that powerful, compulsive, destructive wanting. Even when the liking fades, it's distinct from casual use.
And the book outlines why drugs are so addictive. There are, what, 3 main factors?
Yeah. First, drugs hijack and overactivate the brain incentive systems. They flood the dopamine and opiate pathways, creating way more pleasure and desire than natural rewards ever could.
Okay, they feel unnaturally good.
Second, repeated use leads to tolerance and then nasty withdrawal syndromes when you stop. The brain creates drug-opposite effects to compensate. So stopping reveals this horrible state, driving reuse just to feel normal or avoid feeling awful.
And the third factor sounds ominous.
It is permanent neural sensitization. Drugs like cocaine can permanently make those dopamine neurons hyperreactive. So even long after withdrawal, cues associated with the drug can trigger massive craving, intense wanting, even if the drug itself isn't pleasurable anymore.
That explains relapse risk, even years later. The wanting system is just permanently ramped up.
Exactly. It's like that craving is stuck in overdrive, detached from any actual enjoyment. It's a really tough neurological change.
And this applies mostly to chemical addictions. What about things like gambling?
Well, behavioral addictions, gambling, internet, maybe even food for some are definitely compulsive. They share some features, but whether the underlying neurological changes are identical to drug addiction is still, debated.
Okay, let's shift from the intensity of addiction to something seemingly more everyday, but still really complex: hunger and eating.
Right, and eating is way more complicated than thirst. With thirst, you need water. With eating, you need a whole range of nutrients: proteins, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals.
So how do we manage that? How do we choose the right stuff?
Evolution's given us some built-in guides. We have innate taste preferences, like we're generally born liking sweet things, which usually signal calories.
And disliking bitter things, which often signal toxins.
Exactly. But we also learn preferences. If a food consistently makes us feel good, provides energy, we learn to like its taste through classical conditioning.
And the opposite is true too, right? Conditioned taste aversion. Eat something, get sick later.
And boom, you develop a really strong dislike for that food, even if it wasn't the culprit. It's a powerful survival mechanism. Avoid things associated with illness.
So again, it's that mix of homeostasis needing fuel and incentives wanting pasty food.
Definitely. We want to eat as much as we need to eat.
Yeah.
That interplay is crucial. There was a great study by Miller and Kesson back in '52.
Oh, yeah. What did they do?
They had rats work for milk. One group got to actually drink the milk, the whole sensory experience. The other group got the same amount of milk delivered directly into their stomachs via a tube.
So bypassing the mouth and taste?
Right. Both groups got the calories, satisfied the homeostatic need, but the rats who drank the milk learned the task much, much better.
Showing that the taste, the oral sensation, is a really powerful incentive in itself.
Hugely important. It's why just getting nutrients intravenously isn't very satisfying. We crave that mouthfeel, the taste. It's also why we have things like conditioned satiety.
Learned fullness, how does that work?
Animals that are sham-fed, meaning the food passes through the mouth but not into the stomach for digestion, they'll initially eat a normal amount, but over time they learn they're not getting calories and start eating more. Fullness is partly learned based on consequences.
And then there's allisthesia. That sounds fancy.
It just means that things taste better when you need them. Food tastes amazing when you're starving. Water is incredible when you're parched. An external stimulus fixing an internal problem feels extra good. It guides behavior.
Okay, so beyond taste and learning, what are the body's actual signals for hunger and fullness? Is it the stomach growling?
Surprisingly, no. Stomach growls are just air and fluid moving around. They often happen when you're hungry, but they don't cause the hunger. People without stomachs still feel hungry.
Really? So what are the real signals?
A key one is glucose levels. Neurons in the brainstem and hypothalamus are super sensitive to dips in blood glucose. That's a major signal for needing energy.
And for feeling full. Satiety.
That involves signals from multiple places. The stomach walls stretch and have chemical receptors. The duodenum, the first part of the small intestine, releases a hormone called CCK. And crucially, the liver has nutrient detectors that send signals via the vagus nerve.
So the brain is getting all this input.
Right. It integrates it in stages. First, the brainstem kind of adds it all up, overall need level, and links it to taste processing. That's the allisthesia link.
And then it becomes conscious hunger.
That happens further up in the forebrain, especially the hypothalamus. That's where the drive to actually seek out and eat food gets triggered.
Now, the hypothalamus, didn't researchers used to think there were specific hunger and satiety centers there?
Yes, the classic view was the lateral hypothalamus, LH, was the hunger center, destroy it, rats stop eating, and the ventromedial hypothalamus, VMH, was the satiety center, destroy it, rats overeat and get obese.
And it's more complicated now.
Much more. We know these areas interact with tons of other brain systems, like dopamine pathways. And the current thinking revolves around a set point hypothesis, meaning these hypothalamic areas might actually adjust the body's target weight, its set point. Rats with LH lesions eventually stabilize, but at a lower weight. Rats with VMH lesions also stabilize, but at a much higher weight. They're defending a new, albeit unhealthy, set point.
That set point idea seems really relevant to understanding obesity.
Hugely relevant. Obesity being 30% or more over ideal weight is a major health issue, an epidemic really. And that set point concept helps explain why it's so hard to fight and why the stigma is often unfair. It's not just willpower.
Right, it's complex. Genetic factors play a big role.
Definitely. Obesity runs in families. Twin studies are compelling. Identical twins tend to have very similar weights and gain patterns even when raised apart. Genes influence fat cells, metabolic rate, maybe the set point itself.
But psychology matters too. Overeating isn't just biological.
No, absolutely not. One factor is the breakdown of conscious restraint. People dieting, restrained eaters, often overeat massively if they break their diet rules, like the floodgates open.
And emotions, stress eating.
That's a big one too. Studies show overweight individuals often eat more when feeling tense or anxious. Any emotional arousal seems to trigger eating for some, suggesting stress can activate those basic overeating circuits.
So, given the set point and these other factors, losing weight and keeping it off is tough.
Incredibly tough. Most diets fail long-term because the body fights back against deprivation. It lowers metabolism, increases hunger, evolutionary responses to famine that backfire today.
So what does work?
The key seems to be permanent lifestyle changes, new eating habits, regular exercise, not crash diets. Studies comparing behavior modification, drugs, and combo approaches found behavior mod often had the best long-term success, possibly because it boosts self-efficacy, that belief in your own ability to succeed.
Now, on the other extreme, we have eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia.
Yes, very serious conditions, mostly affecting young women. Anorexia nervosa is extreme self-starvation, losing at least 15% of body weight, often denying there's a problem, being obsessed with food and exercise. It's dangerous.
And bulimia.
That involves cycles of binge eating, consuming huge amounts of food, quickly followed by purging, like vomiting or using laxatives. People with bulimia are often normal weight, so it can be hidden, but it takes a heavy physical toll.
What drives these disorders? It sounds multifaceted.
It really is. There are sociocultural pressures, biological factors, and family or personality issues all intertwined.
The sociocultural part seems significant, especially the focus on thinness in Western culture.
Absolutely. The rise in these disorders mirrors the increasing cultural pressure, particularly on women, to be thin. Objectification theory offers one explanation.
How does that work?
It suggests that being constantly exposed to sexual objectification leads women to internalize an outsider's view of their own bodies' self-objectification. They start focusing on how they look more than how they feel.
And that leads to
Constant body monitoring, which uses up mental energy like women doing worse on a math test in a swimsuit. It also leads to shame and anxiety, which can then trigger disordered eating as a coping mechanism or attempt to gain control.
Are there biological factors too?
Potentially, yes. Maybe hypothalamic issues in anorexia, or serotonin system problems, or executive function difficulties in bulimia.
And family or personality?
Sometimes factors like high family demands for perfection without much warmth, or using control over eating to gain attention or manage low self-esteem seem to play a role. Therapy and sometimes medication can help, but they're tough, persistent disorders.
Okay, let's shift gears again to another major area of motivation, gender and sexuality. The book calls this a social motive.
Yeah, because unlike hunger or thirst, it typically involves another person. And it's not about correcting an internal deficit needed for individual survival, so a simple homeostasis model doesn't quite fit.
And when we talk about sexuality, there are a couple of key distinctions to make.
Right. First, adult sexuality is different from early sexual development. The foundations are laid down way before birth. And second, that constant question, biological factors versus environmental ones, nature versus nurture.
Let's start with early development. How does that work?
It begins prenatally. Early embryos have primitive gonads that can become either tests or ovaries. If you have XY chromosomes, they normally become tests. XX, they become ovaries.
And hormones are critical here.
Absolutely. Specifically androgen. The basic blueprint is female. Androgen needs to be present at a critical time to trigger the development of male genitals.
And this androgenization, it affects more than just anatomy. It affects the brain, too.
Yes. Research, especially in animals, shows prenatal androgen exposure masculinizes brain areas like the hypothalamus. Injecting pregnant monkeys with androgen leads to female offspring showing more male-like behaviors, like aggression.
And the opposite. Stress affecting hormones.
Yeah, maternal stress in rats can reduce androgen in male fetuses, leading to more feminized adult sexual behavior. It highlights how powerful prenatal hormones are, at least in other animals. Whether it's exactly the same in humans is debated, but it points to an early biological influence.
But for humans, nurture the environment. How you're raised seems really powerful too, doesn't it? Especially when biology and rearing clash.
That's the prevailing view, yes. Often, social rearing seems to override prenatal hormonal influences on gender identity if they conflict. For example, studies on women exposed to DES, a synthetic hormone, during pregnancy found little effect on their daughter's gender development, suggesting the social environment was dominant.
But there's counter-evidence, right? Cases where biology seems stronger.
There are, like individuals with androgen insensitivity, genetic males born with female-like genitals, raised as girls, who then often transition to a male identity relatively easily at puberty. That suggests biology played a strong role.
Although there are debates about how normally they were raised as girls.
True. And other studies show similar individuals developing typical female identities when raised as girls. Then you have the famous case of the identical twin boy raised as a girl after a surgical accident.
Who ultimately rejected the female identity.
Right, suggesting early brain development set limits on the impact of rearing. So it's complex. Both nature and nurture are clearly huge factors, usually working together. When they clash, it's still a controversial area.
Okay, moving to adult sexuality. Puberty brings a hormonal surge. How much do hormones drive adult desire in humans?
Surprisingly less than in many other animals. In many species, sexual activity is tightly linked to hormone levels. Castration often eliminates it. In human males, testosterone loss can decrease desire, but often doesn't eliminate sexual function, and emotional factors are huge.
And in women?
Even less hormone-dependent, it seems. Menopause doesn't typically kill desire. Again, social and emotional factors, relationship quality, stress, seem much more predictive of desire levels for both sexes than just hormones.
So the brain is really ground zero for desire.
Absolutely. The primary sex organ, as they say. Spinal reflexes handle mechanics, but the hypothalamus and higher brain areas are crucial for the actual behavior and feelings. Stimulation there can cause sexual feelings. Lesions can abolish sexual behavior.
And early experiences matter a lot too, like those primate studies.
Yeah, monkeys raised in isolation have huge problems with social and sexual behavior later. They didn't learn through play, didn't form bonds. It suggests that for humans too, early secure attachments are probably foundational for healthy adult intimacy.
And culture throws another layer on top of all this.
A massive layer. Societies vary wildly in their rules and attitudes about sex. Incest is universally taboo. But views on premarital sex, homosexuality, even childhood sexuality differ enormously across cultures.
Like the examples in the book, the Chua versus the Kuna.
Exactly. And even within one culture, like the U.S., attitudes change over time. Think of the sexual revolution. Now we have influences like STD awareness shaping things. But some sex differences in attitudes seem persistent.
Like women tending to link sex with relationships more, and men maybe expressing more interest in partner variety. And differences in jealousy triggers.
Those patterns are often reported, yeah.
Yeah.
And also differences in response to visual stimuli. It's a very complex picture, blending biology, experience, and culture.
Which brings us to sexual orientation itself. It's more than just behavior, right?
Definitely. It's usually seen as having components like erotic attraction, behavior, romantic feelings, and self-identity. And it's best viewed as a continuum, not just categories, plus acknowledging asexuality.
What do we know about what determines someone's orientation?
Well, looking at predictors, the strongest and most consistent finding across studies for both men and women is childhood gender nonconformity.
Meaning?
Meaning, as kids, tending not to enjoy activities typical for their sex, preferring activities and friends more typical of the other sex. This pattern strongly predicts adult homosexual orientation.
And a lot of older theories haven't held up, like identifying with a parent or first sexual experiences.
Right. Research hasn't supported those well.
Yeah.
The focus is more on the development of homosexual feelings, the attraction itself, which often precedes any behavior. And crucially, science suggests orientation isn't a choice. You don't choose who you're attracted to.
So the debate is why those feelings develop. Nature or nurture again.
Exactly. And they're different perspectives. J. Michael Bailey, for instance, leans more towards nature, especially for men. He argues male orientation is largely innate, set early by biology, citing those cases of boys raised as girls still being attracted to women.
But he sees female sexuality as maybe more fluid or socially influenced.
That's his view, yes. More complex.
And then there's Daryl Bem's theory, the exotic becomes erotic idea.
Right, EBE theory. It's fascinating because it tries to integrate nature and nurture.
How does it work?
Bem proposes a chain. Biological factors like genes or hormones influence childhood temperament.
Okay, basic personality style.
Yeah. Temperament then influences whether a child prefers sex-typical or atypical activities, gender conformity or nonconformity.
The predictor we just talked about.
Exactly. This preference then leads the child to feel different from, or exotic, compared to either same-sex or other-sex peers.
Feeling like an outsider to one group or the other.
Right. Yeah, Bem argues this feeling of difference creates heightened physiological arousal. Not sexual initially, just general arousal. And then, later in development, this arousal gets transformed into erotic attraction. Whatever felt exotic becomes erotic.
So if boys mostly play with boys and feel different from girls, girls become exotic and thus erotic, leading to heterosexuality.
That's the idea. Because society emphasizes male-female differences, most kids feel the other sex is exotic, leading to heterosexuality being most common. But if a boy felt different from other boys due to temperament and activity preferences, they become the exotic group, potentially leading to homosexual attraction.
It's an attempt to explain both orientations with one process, linking biology, temperament, social comparison, and attraction.
Precisely. He compares it to imprinting a biological predisposition shaped by early environmental experience. A real nature-nurture interaction.
What an incredible deep dive. We've journeyed through the intricate world of motivation and seen how it's not a simple switch, but an incredibly complex dance between internal drives and external incentives.
Yeah, it really highlights how biology, psychology, culture, they're all woven together. It's not just one thing.
We've uncovered how precise biological processes like homeostasis for hunger and thirst interact with learning and pleasure, and how powerful those wanting versus liking circuits are, especially in addiction.
And then seeing how something as fundamental as eating is shaped by innate tastes, conditioning, satiety signals, set points, and even emotional states.
Right? And then moving into sexuality, seeing the complex interplay of prenatal hormones, social rearing, cultural norms, and these fascinating theories about how orientation itself might develop. It shows these domains aren't separate at all.
Not at all. They constantly influence each other. Basic drives are shaped by experience, and complex motives have biological roots. It's all interconnected.
So if our deepest desires, from what we crave for dinner to who we're attracted to, are shaped by such a complex dance of genetics, brain chemistry, early experiences, and cultural forces, how much of our free will truly influences our deepest motivations? And what does that mean for how we understand ourselves and others?